Welcome, everybody, to this February the 14th. Happy Valentine's. And as your love life is heating up with your sweetheart, it's warming up all up and down the East Coast today, like in Atlanta, where it's going to be 60 degrees as the high for this Valentine's Day. Norfolk, 54 degrees. And Pittsburgh, a little cooler, 45 degrees. Richmond, you're going to get up to 57. Nashville, almost 60, 59 degrees. And Philadelphia, 44 degrees. So it's warming up. At least it is for a day. Actually, I fear that it might just be a tease, and we'll probably get some more cooler temperatures, except here in West Palm Beach, where we come to you every Saturday from noon to 2 and Sunday. It's 76 degrees, and that is going to be our high for today as well. So anyway, we've got a lot to talk about today, including Nancy Guthrie, Epstein, the Georgia governor's race, and then I'll spend just a minute on the economy and how we're faring. John Kiriakou, it's a tricky one. John Kiriakou is the guy that you see all over YouTube. He is a former CIA agent. Well, at least that's what he claims. And I'm not questioning the CIA agent part. I'm just questioning the former part. We'll talk about that some more in a minute. Tommy Whiteley is going to be with us. He's a young 30-year-old. He's just graduating from UV. Well, he's actually under 30. He's in his mid-20s, and he's graduating from UVA Law School in just a few weeks, and he's headed to New York to work for a big firm. But I invited him on because he is the president of the Connecticut chapter of Our Republican Legacy. I think he represents the potential of what the new generation can be in our country, and boy, do we ever need him. Andy Ross from Nashville, Tennessee, will be with us. If you're a country fan, you probably recognize his name. He's a country music star, and he is an entrepreneur. He has an alternative beer to Budweiser, and is red, white, and blue, baby. We had a great interview earlier this week, and I can't wait for you to listen to that. So Nancy Guthrie, the mother of Savannah Guthrie, the star of the Today Show, went missing about 10 days ago. Well, it's probably 12 days ago now. And the clues are pretty few, actually. Now, we do see the image of an individual that they're claiming is the one who may have kidnapped her. He or she was seen outside of Ms. Guthrie's home at 2 o'clock in the morning, and they got these images from the Ring camera. Now, the kidnapper, alleged kidnapper, and I think it's pretty sure, we're pretty sure that this person is the one, was pretty well covered up. You can't see or learn a lot about him. The FBI is not telling us a lot about him or her. Anthony, do you have those clips? My monitor is not showing me the clips. I'm on the wrong input here, I think. But if you can roll that video, are we rolling the video of the January the 6th pipe bomber? And then we'll show you the video of the kidnapper of Nancy Guthrie. So there you see the pipe bomber in Washington. And now we'll show you the kidnapper in Tucson, Arizona. Anyway, I don't know. It seems like deja vu all over again. Now we have a lone kidnapper. Most people don't believe that someone would act alone in kidnapping somebody, even an 84-year-old who is frail. There's just a lot that can go wrong, and it's kind of a two-person operation, but we've only been given an image of one person that is believed to be the kidnapper. And we're not being told too much else about it. Here's the only thing. Oh, gosh, here we go again. My instincts are telling me that what we're being told is not all there is to know. And, I mean, why Nancy Guthrie? We have no known motive. Of course, one motive would be money, but there's so many more wealthy people, even in Tucson and Scottsdale, than Nancy Guthrie. I have no idea about her financial capacity. Clearly, her daughter, Savannah, she gets a cool $40 million a year, so we know that she's got bucks. But why target them? I mean, Savannah Guthrie, to me, seems like one of the sweetest people I've ever seen on television. I love her, and I suspect millions of others do too, because she's been on there for a long time. But I just don't know who or why this sweet 84-year-old was targeted. If you were going to kidnap somebody, wouldn't you be looking for Daddy Warbucks or somebody with real money? And I just don't know. It's not making sense to me. I can't make heads or tails out of it. Information coming out is very slow. But there's one very significant development that really got my attention. And it plays in to what I'm saying. The Tucson Sheriff's Office found gloves about 1.5 miles from Nancy Guthrie's house. Now, they don't know who the gloves belong to, but they are going to have them tested to see if they reveal any of Nancy Guthrie's DNA, and or whether the DNA on the gloves matches with someone else in the data bank that might lead them to a suspect or a person of interest. So that's very interesting, but here's the catch. The FBI is there in full force, yet the Tucson sheriff is not giving the gloves to the FBI to be tested. Instead, they sent them to a lab down here in Florida. Now, that raises more questions than it answers for me. All I glean from that is the Tucson sheriff does not trust the FBI. Well, hello, duh, neither do I. And it's just curious to me that they would send these gloves to a lab other than Quantico, where the FBI is up to its ears in the Nancy Guthrie disappearance. Now, here's where my suspicions go off, get fueled. I've been asking myself, I mean, I ask, as I just said, why Nancy Guthrie? But I also have to ask, why now? Why at this particular point in time? And I'm sorry, I cannot help but connect the time to one another. We get the Epstein dump, 3 million documents 10 days ago. I think that was on Friday, and on Saturday or Sunday, I think it was Sunday, Nancy Guthrie goes missing. What are we not talking about right now? What is the mainstream media not talking about? I watched Fox the other night. There's so much to unpack with Epstein and the new trove of documents. But what we're not talking about is Epstein. They're talking about Nancy Guthrie over and over and over again, saying the same blooming things and showing the same videos. And it's just curious to me about the timing. Now, it proves nothing. It could truly be a coincidence, or maybe not, though. Maybe not. And that's how little confidence I have in our government, and particularly our law enforcement and intelligence agencies within our government. I mean, it seems kind of stupid to even think that there could be any connection between Nancy Guthrie, and Jeffrey Epstein. All I know is we're not talking about Jeffrey Epstein right now, and we probably should. Because, folks, I've been telling you for 3.5 years that I believe that this federal government is rotten to its core. And John Kiriakou agrees. And he was a CIA agent for 15 years, 20 years. And we're going to unpack that with him. But the stuff about Epstein that is coming out, I don't think we know. I don't think we thought that it was about sex with underage girls. And one of the leading victims was 17 and a half. Okay, that's bad. That's really bad. But that was my belief, really, that we were talking about sex with 17 and a half year olds versus the other stuff that's coming out now. There is a strong inference that there was sexual perversion with people much younger than the lead victim that was 17 and a half. Much younger, as in young people. I'm dancing around because YouTube will throw us off. So I have to choose my words selectively so YouTube won't cancel our video. But you can read between the lines. You understand what I'm saying. And there are also strong innuendo and hints of actual satanistic rituals and really demonic stuff. Here is a United States congressman from California. He is a Democrat, saying that he thinks the information that is coming out is such, and it is so bad and so significant that it could literally topple the British monarchy. Here's roll tape.
It's a blatant violation of the Epstein Transparency Act, but it also asks a fundamental question. Who are they protecting? Why are they protecting these rich and powerful men, people I call part of the Epstein class? Why are we in a country where there is no elite accountability for people who do the most heinous things? You have in England the king now calling for an investigation and possible prosecution of his own brother. You have in Norway the princess who no longer has support to be the queen. And yet in the United States of America, we have someone in the cabinet, Howard Lutnick, who is all over these Epstein files, who allegedly had business with Epstein after he was convicted of pedophilia, and he still is in the cabinet. We need to ask ourselves, are we in America going to have elite accountability? Are we going to call on rich and powerful people who broke the law or cavorted with a pedophile, a convicted pedophile? Are we going to call them to account? Are we going to have prosecutions for billionaires who went to this island and either raped underage girls or saw underage girls being raped and didn't say anything? Are we going to have investigations? I'll tell you what this is about. It's not just about the 1,200 survivors. It's about 2 tiers of justice in America. It's about people who can accumulate wealth and power and don't have to care about the rest of America.
So we're not talking about it. You can watch it on YouTube. You might be able to catch it on Newsmax. Fox is very silent on it. But this stuff, folks, is really, really nauseating. And it is exploitation at its absolute worst and involves satanic rituals, maybe even sacrifices. It's bad. And we need the truth, and the people that participated need to be held accountable. One of the casualties of the latest document dump is Howard Lutnick. Now, I really like a lot about Howard Lutnick. I think he's sharp. I think he's smart. He is advising the President of the United States every single day. But I've never cozied up to him. There's something about him I'm not sure. I've just, something in the back of my brain, the hairs on the back of my neck, don't stand up. They just tingle a little bit, not in a good way. He went on national television and said that he lived next door to Jeffrey Epstein, and that he and his wife went over and called on Mr. Epstein when the Lutnicks moved into their townhouse in Manhattan for a social visit. He and his wife, and that Epstein gave them a tour of his townhouse, the largest in Manhattan, the largest home in Manhattan. And when they got to the living room, there was a massage table, and Howard said that he or his wife commented, well, this is a pretty odd piece of furniture for the living room. And he says, oh, I get a massage every day. And then he kind of bumped Lutnick and said, the right kind of a massage. So creepy. And Howard Lutnick said, well, my wife and I looked at each other and we said, excuse us, we have to go now. We have somewhere we need to be. And never went back to the house. Uh-oh. A little email has emerged that is between Howard Lutnick and Jeffrey Epstein a couple of years after that encounter occurred. And he was saying, hey, my wife and I are going to be in the Caribbean over Thanksgiving or President's Weekend, whatever it was, a holiday weekend. And they'd like to drop by and see him. So basically, he just lied. And what else is involved, I don't know. But people are whispering about it. And I'm listening to the whispers. And I'm not going to repeat whispers, but you can go look for yourself on YouTube. I can't remember her first name. Her last name is King. She's a beautiful young lady and so talented, so smart, and she researches all this stuff. So if you really want to get your eyes opened and your skin crawling, go watch her video. Her last name's King. It'll come right up on YouTube. All right, well, the Georgia governor's race, that's also heating up. We've talked about Valentine's and the temperature. The governor's race has got a new entrant. His name is Rick Jackson. Supposedly, he's a billionaire. He made his money in healthcare right there in Alpharetta, where we come to you every Saturday on the John Fredericks Radio Network, on WMLB in Atlanta. We're also on in Nashville, Richmond, Norfolk, Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, Morgantown, and Lynchburg. We also come to you on cdm.press across their digital platforms and their social media platforms. You can watch us right now on Getter.com, Rumble, Facebook Live, YouTube Live, and just hit the live button, search for John Gordon Truth, and you can watch the live stream in the comfort of your home, and you can even interact with us on Getter. I wish that you would, and as always, you can email me, johngordontruth@gmail.com. So Rick Jackson, an unknown with a very humble beginnings. He basically grew up as an orphan, as I understand it, lived in the homes, the very poorest housing in Atlanta, and he's a rags to riches story, and he's going after the establishment. Well, things were looking pretty darn good for Lieutenant Governor Burt Jones. He seemed to be on autopilot, headed towards winning the Republican nomination, and then bam, Rick Jackson comes out of left field, and now he is polling, according to the Fresh Coefficient poll, 24% to Jones 16%. Raffensperger's 9%. Golly, P.T. Barnum said, a sucker's born every minute. I didn't know they all moved to Georgia. My God, who would vote for Raffensperger? Talk about somebody who shirked his duties, did not fulfill his oath, denied that there were problems in the 2020 election, and he was the one counting the votes. I have so little regard for him, and the fact that he can get 9% of the vote, I think is scary. I wonder, Brad, how are you going to pull this one off? You beat David Belle Isle, Sheriff TJ, and the congressman from Athens without a runoff in 2022. I wonder how you're going to pull this one off. It'll be interesting to see. And Chris Do-Nothing Carr is getting exactly what he deserves, 3%. So good luck with that one, Chris. I think you're going to finally have to go to work for a living and get off the government payroll. But that will not be a disappointment for me. But the knives are out. People are talking about Rick Jackson. People don't know much about him politically. He claims to be an outsider, which he clearly is. He also claims to be a Trump loyalist, but people are questioning whether that is true. I don't know Rick Jackson, never met him. I do know Burt Jones, and I really like him. He is a regular guy. He was a football player at Woodward Academy, where my youngest son went to school and played football, not with Burt Jones, but a few years after him. And then he went on to the University of Georgia and was on a championship team. And then he was a state senator for a number of years. Then he ran and won for lieutenant governor with President Trump's endorsement. And he's got Trump's endorsement now in the governor's race. So it's going to be very interesting to see how it plays out. I initially thought that the Georgians for Integrity may be, when I found out that Rick Jackson was going to run, and he's going to put $50 million of his own money into the race. Now, let me tell you, that's real money, and money is the mother's milk of politics. That spells trouble for Burt because he can't match that. He can't raise that. He can't match it. Even though Burt's got deep pockets of his own, and he's kind of viewed as the establishment candidate. I'm not sure about that. I don't know what his relationship is to Kemp. I would actually think that Chris Carr would be closer to the establishment's candidate because he is Kemp's boy. He does whatever Kemp tells him to do. Raffensperger, I don't know their relationship either. But they all coexist under the Gold Dome. They're not backbiting at each other. So I just don't know. Somebody under the dome is going to have to come on and explain to us how those relationships work and what the relationships really are. But, Georgians for Integrity, that's the dark money that has been running negative ads about Burt Jones for the last 2 or 3 months. They've spent millions of dollars. Nobody knows who they are. Nobody knows where the money is coming from. I originally attributed it to Brian Kemp without any evidence, just, 2 and 2 equals 4. We know Kemp's got a huge stockpile of money, and we also know that he's got a political machine. And as I said, I would think that Kemp would be supporting Carr, backing him, or maybe even Raffensperger as a second alternative. I don't know any of that. Let me be very clear. This is my conjecture based on what I know about Georgia politics. And obviously it's very little under the Gold Dome today. I mean, I just don't know. They keep their cards very close to the vest. But the point I was getting at, we know Kemp's got a ton of money sitting there. Now, I actually suspect that money is sitting there because he has some delusions that he can run and be competitive for president of the United States. Good luck with that one, Governor. I think you've got a less than I think Carr's got a better chance to become governor than you do of becoming president. But so I don't know why you raised all this money. I thought you were going to run for the United States Senate. You didn't. That didn't disappoint me. But Where's the money going? Maybe it's going to Georgians for integrity. I don't know. I have no evidence of that. This is pure speculation. But who is funding Georgians for integrity? So when I found out, I heard the news about Rick Jackson, I said, oh, there's the light. The light just came on. It's Rick Jackson that's doing it. He steadfastly denies it, as does his campaign manager. And it wasn't bureaucratic politician speak. It was a absolute denial, hard stop. So the fact of the matter is, we really don't know who Georgians for Integrity are today. We really just don't know. But it could be somebody affiliated with some of the people that we've discussed above, but we just don't know. But Rick Jackson is certainly throwing a monkey wrench into the campaign. $50 million. Wow. Unless they can find something really incriminating against him, he's going to be very formidable. Now, another poll shows Burt is ahead by 1% over Rick Jackson, and Raffensperger and Carr trailing way in the dust. So it'll just be interesting to see how this evolves. But look, May the 19th is just around the corner, is going to be here in a hurry. And we'll see how things pan out. Well, I was real excited this week to get the new jobs numbers. We added 130,000 new jobs in the month of January, which is well in excess of the 55,000 that was projected. So that is very good news. I've said all along, this economy is on fire. Every indicia. I just read this morning, actually, where President Trump signed an executive order and got rid of a huge amount of the Obama administration regulations. So that deregulations, investment from companies in the United States, lowering interest rates, tariffs, free money for our Treasury, paying down the debt, all of those things spell a great potential economy. Most people now are saying that they expect a 6% growth in the GDP for this year, which would be the largest since Reagan. But now President Trump is saying he doesn't believe that number. He thinks it's much higher. He said, and I heard it with my own ears, that it could go as high as 12 or 15%. And you know what I found about Trump? He makes these outlandish statements, and the next thing you know, you turn around and look, and dadgum if it's not true. So I'm really excited about where this economy is, and it is an economy that is broadening. It is not there yet, but here's the good news. Government workers are down a largest reduction in the federal workforce, again, since Reagan. Even though, Clinton paired the federal workforce as well. But I think Trump has reduced federal employees by 400,000, maybe is the number that sticks out in my mind. But the economy is broadening out. Most of the job increases were in healthcare, construction, and social assistance. Those were the drivers of the jobs numbers. So we'll look forward to new economic information, and I think that we're going to see a very robust economy in 2026, assuming as long as there are no force majeure events that will interrupt it, like COVID or like a war, and those are real possibilities. I mean, you got Iran saying that they're going to resume their nuclear initiative, and you got Israel that is putting all kinds of pressure on Trump to get into a war with Iran. That's a bad idea. That's a bad idea. And I don't think Trump's going to go for it. We do have a really good show coming up for you. We're brought to you today by PCRenergy.com. They're a restaurant services company right in Atlanta, Georgia. They cover North Georgia and have hundreds of restaurant partners. They take care of their grease traps, their vent hoods, their waste vegetable oil, and they'll sanitize the front of the house and the back of the house. And if you're tired of messy, not consistent service and 800 numbers to automated attendance and no callbacks, look up pcrenergy.com on the web and send them an inquiry, give them a call. They'll come and help you. Actually, Anthony just let me know 352,000 employees have left the federal government in President Trump's first year in office. So I'm saying that number is closer to 400,000 in 2026. A lot of them did leave voluntarily. When Musk went in with Doge, they offered them buyouts of their employment if they would leave by, I think, August or September of this year. So a lot of them did take that offer. And then, Trump has definitely trimmed the rolls in a number of departments in the federal government, and his cabinet leaders are certainly supporting him in that effort. All right, so stay tuned now. We're going to have John Kiriakou. I think I got his name right. John Kiriakou. You just have to say it fast. Kiriakou. Former CIA agent who turned whistleblower, and he says he's former. I'm not sure of it. I asked him some questions that I consider to be litmus tests, and he flunked every single one of them. And when I would kind of pin him down and get him into a corner, he would start to say, well, I was talking to him about JFK and mentioned gave him the evidence that we've talked about here on the program for years now of my belief that it was our own government that killed Kennedy. He didn't want to, he wouldn't say it to begin with, and he didn't say it at the end, but I laid out the evidence for him in the books that supported it. And the guy is so clever. He said, well, I don't think anybody appreciates just how bad those Dulles brothers were. And then he said, well, David Talbot, who I referenced as the author of The Devil's Chessboard, he is a brilliant author. Just stuff that kind of, I felt I was being played, frankly, and I kind of let him know that. But he said he'll come back on the show, and I might just have to hammer him a little harder because I've got my suspicions about him and that other guy with the big hair. What's his name, Anthony? He's all over YouTube. You can shout it out. Oh, you can't remember? That is not his name. That's my affliction, can't remember. But if you look at YouTube, you've seen him out there. He's got big hair, and he talks about the CIA. It feels to me like it's some kind of a disinformation campaign. God, have I just gotten so cynical that everything I look at is tainted? Andrew Bustamante is the guy's name. Thanks, Anthony. He used to work for the CIA. He claims to have had significance, but people that seem to know say he was really just a clerk or something. He was not that significant. But I am a intelligence community and FBI detractor because I've learned that we just can't trust them. Not today. We need reform. I don't want to blow it up and start over. That would be a waste of institutional knowledge. But I do want to radically reform our intelligence community and our law enforcement community within our federal government. It's way overdue, and I think that President Trump is working to dismantle the deep state, and hopefully reforms will come out of that effort, but we shall continue to wait and see. Write me if you think I've lost my mind, johngordontruth@gmail.com. I really don't think I have. I told John Kiriakou, I said, as I'm saying these things, I feel like I almost feel to myself like I sound crazy, but I'm looking at evidence, hard evidence. And we can go through Building 7, we can go through Butler, Pennsylvania. We can go through Charlie Kirk's murder. We can go through Epstein, and January the 6th, all of them have fingerprints of intelligence on them. And it is disturbing to me. And I'm not going to quit talking about it until we get the truth and Americans get the truth and become so repulsed by it and upset about it that we can bring public pressure to achieve meaningful reform. That's my goal. That's what I'm working on. And I really don't, I do a reality check with myself every day. And I ask myself, are you think you're exaggerating this? You think you're gotten the wrong perception? And I go and I listen to people that take the other side, and I'm like, nah, I got this. I'm right. So I'm interested in what you think, though. I love to hear from our listeners and our viewers. And we're all over the web on YouTube, Getter, X, Facebook. And please come watch the live streams. And all past episodes are on johngordon.tv. So if you're on social media, Facebook and Getter and Rumble and X and Instagram and did I say Facebook, YouTube Live, like us and subscribe if you would. It's a click of a mouse, and you just would do great things to help build our channel as we are continuing to grow, and I appreciate it. Our growth allows us to have people like John Kiriakou and Governor Scott Wallace, who was on with us not too long ago. And we're going to have James O'Keefe coming up in the next few episodes. So we've got a lot of really good guests on, and it's only because people will hit the subscribe button. You know, these guests, they're savvy. They have media people that watch, look at our numbers when we invite them to come on. And some people say, nah, we can't do it. Oh, I'm busy writing a book. But we had Peter Schweitzer on 2 weeks ago and had just a fabulous interview with him. I hope you were able to see it. If you didn't, go to johngordon.tv. It's sitting right there just waiting on you. All right, let's get to today's program. And this is The Truth. I'm John Gordon. Thank you for joining us. And again, happy Valentine's. Young people turned out in record numbers for the 2024 election, and a lot of them voted Republican, much to the surprise of many. I had the occasion to meet a very impressive young man. He is a senior at the University of Virginia Law School. He also has the distinction of being the chair of the Connecticut Republican Legacy Organization, which is a group of basically young people who are Republicans and maybe not so conservative. We're going to find out. Welcome, Tommy Whiteley, to the show.
Thank you very much for having me on, John. It's a pleasure to be here.
It is our pleasure. You know, a lot of our future depends on your generation, and there's been a lot of focus on it. What generation are you anyway? Are you a Gen Z?
I fall into Gen Z, yeah, on the older side, but I'm in that group.
I can't keep them straight. The baby boomers are the only ones I'm sure that I know, and that would be me. Translation, I'm old, but you're full of promise. You're on your way to New York to go to work for one of those highfalutin law firms that are paying you an obscene amount of money right out of law school. But you care enough about our country and your own generation and future to volunteer your time to the Republican causes. So tell us what you're up to, and help us understand why so many people turned out to vote for Donald Trump.
Yeah, so I think I'll start by just discussing the group that I'm affiliated with, our Republican Legacy. It's a relatively recent group. It was founded after the 2020 election by former Senators Bill Cohen, John Danforth, and some former representatives and Republican governors. And the organization is dedicated to promoting 5 core tenets of what were historically Republican values. Those being free enterprise, peace through strength, fiscal responsibility, adherence to the Constitution, and promoting unity. We want to be a big tent party. And so in my current role, I'm the Connecticut State Chair, but I'll be switching over to a more youth-focused role because of the reasons you're talking about. Youth voting is up across the board, across elections, but particularly so in 2024. And we'd like to keep that momentum going.
I missed one. I got free markets, peace through strength, fiscal conservative, something, and then unity.
Adherence to the Constitution.
Constitution. Okay. So those sound like pretty conservative values to me. I don't have a problem with any of those. In fact, I could join your organization today, right this minute. How much is it going to cost me?
We'd love to have nothing at all. Yeah, the organization itself it's run primarily by people who have been in Republican politics for a while, and so the idea is not to push some new liberal wing of the Republican Party. It's very much adherence to traditional conservative values. Many of the people who are in the leadership grew up in the Reagan-Bush era and just prefer the sort of small government iteration of the Republican Party.
I don't think it's ever going to happen. I mean, right now we got a $38 trillion deficit, and the new omnibus spending bill actually increases spending. There are no savings, and we're going to fund trans surgery, and it seems like we're off the rails. What do you think as a young, upwardly mobile male, white? What's your perspective on funding trans surgeries?
Yeah, and it seems like there's another one coming down the pike. And I think it goes to the larger issue, I think, with appropriations. And I think what my generation believes in government writ large is just pork barrel spending and the fact that people aren't reading these omnibus packages. I mean, it would be difficult to, given just how massive they are.
Yeah, 1,000 pages delivered 24 hours before the vote, best case.
Yeah.
Back to the subject at hand. There is a trend from your generation to show up and to vote Republican, and a lot of your age group are also returning to the church, all of which I think are to be celebrated. Why do you suppose that is a trend? What has motivated that?
Yeah, I think with the return to church specifically, I think it's one of those things where it almost has become, ironically, a counterculture in itself, because there's this prevailing narrative that young people are going out and they're doing all of these things that people associate with the left, and the way that you could push back against that is to go to church and find community that way. But I think community is the real underlying driver there. I think people are tired of social media. I think they seek genuine human connection. I think the church is a phenomenal way to promote that. So I think that's driving a lot of the religious resurgence and attendance at church, which I agree, I think is positive for a lot of those community elements. I think with respect to the voting patterns, I don't know that it endures beyond Trump. I think only 17% of Gen Z actually identifies as Republican, which I would say there's an obvious branding issue here, which is partially what I'm trying to go do with our Republican legacy and find a way to make it more appealing to young people. And it's true, young men and young white men in particular support Trump as a demographic more so than perhaps any other. And that was true in 2020. It's true in 2024. But we're finding now there was a poll from the Harvard Kennedy School in November of last year, and it found that majorities of Gen Z men oppose key parts of the Trump agenda. They don't like the ICE crackdowns. They don't like the elimination of vaccine requirements. They're against unilaterally firing federal workers. And that's even more so true for younger Gen Z, those born between 2002 and 2007. And I think most shockingly from that poll, they found that young men actually preferred in 2026 that there be a Democratic control of Congress by a 12% margin. And so I think what we're seeing there is a pushback to what's being perceived by younger people is more of an extreme iteration of the Republican Party. I think Trump did a great job of attracting young white men in particular into the coalition. But I think it's fraying with some of these things that we're seeing. And I think a lot of that is just the amount of time spent on social media. You see everything as it's happening. I don't think there's anyone in my age group that did not watch or has not been watching with rapt attention what's happening in Minneapolis, and that's impacting public opinion.
So, does your age group think it's okay to rip the federal government off of 10 to 30 billion dollars from Somalians operating fake, phony childcare facilities so they can get free money? I mean, how can you justify that? You say they don't like the deportation strategies, and they don't like firing people from the federal government. I mean, I don't know I don't know whether you're saying that or whether your peers are saying that.
That was reflected in polling, but
Yes.
what I think those are showing are that my generation thinks that two things can be true at once. I think you can think that fraud and grift to the tune of $30 billion is highly problematic. And you can also think that law enforcement officers that don't necessarily have a legal right to detain U.S. citizens should be doing that, or shooting people in the street using kinetic force against U.S. citizens. So I think there's some nuance.
Well, I agree. I agree with you, and I wouldn't support that either, based on the way you framed it. But there are two corrections that I think are worthy of noting. Number one, these are not U.S. citizens. These are people who have entered the country illegally. They are not entitled to due process under our laws because they're not citizens. Secondly, nobody's in favor of killing another human being, except when the person is using their automobile as a lethal weapon and actually run a police officer over with it. And then the other who inserted himself into a lawful arrest with a third party. I mean, there's some things you just don't do. You don't put your finger in a light socket. You don't drive drunk, and you damn sure don't interfere with a police officer in the performance of an arrest. I mean, does reality not factor into this equation?
I think it factors in just as much as the Constitution does. I think there's a right to protest. There's a right to bear arms. I was
Sure.
shocked at the administration's response, seemingly villainizing gun ownership and saying he shouldn't have had a firearm. I thought that was problematic in its own right.
Well, I don't think it was it was an issue of having a gun. I think it was having a gun in what amounted to a demonstration at best, a riot at worst, somewhere in between, probably.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that based on what the Supreme Court has said and what the NRA and the Republicans have been fighting for, he was well within his rights to have the firearm.
I would agree with you, but
I think generally speaking, what I'm saying is we have the highest percentage of independence ever in this country, perhaps since the founding. It's 45% of U.S. adults are independents. And I think what I would like to do in my capacity at our Republican legacy is meet people in the middle and embrace that nuance and say, with the environment, for instance, you can produce oil and gas in this country and do it in a way that's not inherently and seemingly deliberately inflammatory to environmentalists. And there are just ways to do this. You don't drill in the Arctic, but you can, and you don't have strip mining on public lands that people use for hunting and fishing. I think these are broadly popular ideas, and I think they're Republican ideas. But it's a matter of marketing. And I think what's happening now is the Republican Party is losing young people based on how they're selling these things.
Well, I think you make a lot of sense. I'm not what you would call a tree hugger or an environmentalist, but I absolutely am a conservative or conservationist. I mean, I feel like we each have a duty to leave this globe in a better condition than in which we found it. And so I'm wholly on board with that. You can burn coal in a clean fashion. I think you can mine in a responsible fashion. And I'm 100% focused on not polluting our streams and waterways, because that will have long-lasting, very negative implications down the road. So those things I think that everyone should be able to agree upon.
Yeah, and I think that's just one example. I think if you look at trade policy, you don't have to, you can protect American workers without raising the cost of living and the cost of goods and going full bore on tariffs and protectionist policies. You can invest in domestic worker training programs. I just think there are common sense conservative and Republican solutions to these things.
Let's spend a minute. I like what you said. The problem I have is that I don't think what you said tells the whole picture. I mean, when you import a BMW into this country, you have to pay a 25% tariff, if I understand correctly. Yet when someone buys a Ford in Germany, there's a 10% tariff. I'm fine with parity. What's the matter with that? Why should we be giving the EU favorable trade policies when we have spent the last 60 years helping them rebuild and we defended them during World War II? I think that the disparate trade policy probably made sense 60 years ago. Does it make sense today when the EU's economy is roughly the equivalent of the US and they've got a slightly larger population? Don't you think it's time for everybody to stand on their own 2 feet? What's the matter with parity?
I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with parity. I think it's a way of framing it, though. I think Ford has an interest in selling to the European market, and so if it's lower, you can keep it cheaper to get those goods going over there, that's advantageous to Ford. It's advantageous to American workers. I think the problem is what we're doing now is we're taking foreign companies and we're bringing them into the United States, and they're staffed primarily by foreign workers, and we're saying, oh, how great is this for the American worker? And that's sort of the result of a lot of these protectionist policies, where what I think is more beneficial to Americans is having American companies sell goods to the rest of the world at lower prices in a competitive price, but in a way that benefits American workers. So I think it's a matter of how you look at it. I don't think, in some instances, it is slightly egregious, and I think parity is not inherently a bad idea. In fact, it might be a great idea.
I was unaware that we are encouraging people from other company to come and work here. In fact, I thought it was just the opposite, that the H-1B visa has gone up to $100,000 per worker and that there was a cap on how many you could have. That doesn't sound to me that we're encouraging foreign workers, but we are absolutely encouraging foreign investment. And it's not exclusively foreign investment, because it includes U.S. companies like Apple and Johnson and Johnson and other pharmaceuticals who've pledged investment in this country of $18 trillion. That is unprecedented. That's got to trickle down to the American worker, don't you think?
I think when it's what you're describing with the American companies doing that, I would agree. I think the foreign companies that are coming in, that are registered overseas, that capital is not being invested into the local communities. I don't think there's the trickle-down effect. But in the examples that you're giving, yeah, I would think that's beneficial. But I don't think those are contingent on implementing protectionist policies.
Okay, well, I think time will tell. So what do you think about the midterms, and what is your Republican legacy organization doing from the standpoint of activists to help us keep control of Congress, which I think is really kind of teetering right now? If my understanding is correct, with the resignations of Marjorie Taylor Greene, the loss of another Republican, and some other a special election, that our margin is one. Yet we've got 76 Republicans who voted to fund abortions and trans procedures. That's a scary proposition to me.
Yeah, I think with the midterms, it'll be interesting to see what happens. We had the decision coming out of the Supreme Court this week that the California map is going to be upheld, or rather the declining to take up the challenge. So effectively the same result. So It'll be interesting to see whether that negates the gains that Texas made by redistricting. But the math isn't great, and so I think what our Republican legacy is trying to do is, with regard to that last tenet of unity in a bigger tent, we're trying to get people involved at the local level, whether that be school boards or county attorneys. We want people involved, and we want them to be across the spectrum of the Republican Party. And so people are getting involved. They're doing a lot of outreach to local officials to get everyone on board with these tenets that we think are universally liked by Republican voters, by independent voters in particular as well. And it'll be interesting to see. I don't know what Gen Z is going to do. I think it's going to be very contingent on where the administration leads with respect to messaging over the next couple months in the lead up.
Well, I think you make some really good points, Tommy, and I thoroughly appreciate your coming on and talking to us about it and having a very responsible and good conversation. Let me just ask you in parting, you're there at the University of Virginia. You've spent your graduate years there. Did you go there undergraduate? I don't recall.
I did not. I went to Brown undergrad.
Brown, and that has a reputation of being a pretty liberal campus. What was it like to be a student at Brown and now at UVA in the law school? Do you find a liberal bias on the part of your professors? And what's the student body like? And how does it feel to be a conservative in those environments? And can you speak up and speak your mind without being condemned or harassed?
I would say at UVA, I have to give them the highest praise. I think we've got professors across the ideological spectrum. And what I think is great about law school and what's very conducive to a healthy political climate is it's all grounded in facts. There's very little emotion attached to it. It's either something is true or it's not, or it's legal or it's not. And the gray area, you have ambiguity, but you have similar fence posts for the debate, which I think is useful. I think if you're willing to articulate your opinion and you do it in an articulate way, people respect that. I have friends who are very liberal down here, and I have friends who are far more conservative than I am, and it's a good environment. I would say at Brown, there's a left bias in the faculty, absolutely. What I always tell people is I got very good at learning how to understand the other side of the debate at Brown. And I think it's hopefully made me a more effective advocate. But I think it's one of those things. I think people will respect a well-articulated opinion, but to have politics enter every facet of social life got a little tiring after a while.
I can well imagine, but Tommy, you're a very smart individual. And personally, I mean, I went out to dinner last night with another couple. The husband is like me. He's very conservative. The wife, not so much. She's an admitted liberal. We always sort of go to neutral corners and don't talk politics too much, but we did stumble into a political discussion last night, and it was respectful. And she made a lot of really good points. And I think it's healthy to consider other people's opinions and points of view. I think getting locked into a belief because it's supposedly the right conservative position is not necessarily the right answer 100% of the time. So I don't see a problem in hanging out with people that think differently than you and I do. I think it's probably healthy in the long run. And in terms of broadening the tent, I think it's an absolute prerequisite if we're going to do that. So kudos to you for what you're doing. You're giving me hope for the Gen Zers of the world. And you're a dang good tennis player too. So I look forward to crossing paths with you again real soon. Thanks for coming on The Truth today. If you watch YouTube like I do, you know John Kiriakou. He's everywhere. which we'll talk about in just a minute. But John, welcome to The Truth.
Thank you. Good to see you.
So John, if you have not followed him or watched him, worked for the CIA. He became a CIA whistleblower complaining about waterboarding. And John Brennan had him prosecuted for divulging the name of a CIA agent. He was sentenced to 30 years.
30 months.
30 months, I should say. Thank you for that correction. We already talked about the fact that I'm old. So, but 30 months, of which he served 25, I believe. John, welcome to The Truth.
Thank you. Good to be with you.
So are you and John Brennan in touch with each other? Have you ever spoken to him since you went to prison?
No, I have nothing to say to him. I saw him on the street one time, and I looked at him right in the eyes, and he just kind of averted his gaze and kept walking.
Why did he target you? I mean, there were other people that complained about waterboarding. They alleged that you unmasked an agent.
Yeah, there was nobody else went public with waterboarding. I was literally the only person inside the entire CIA. And the reason why John Brennan went after me was that he was one of the godfathers of the torture program. And I outed him, and I outed those around him, and I aired the agency's dirty laundry.
Well, he's not a nice person, is he?
No.
And is he not under investigation in Miami right now under the purview of a grand jury?
He is, and this is a very serious investigation taking place in the Southern District of Florida. You know, a lot of people, especially on the left, say, well, even if he did do something wrong, the statute of limitations has expired. Actually, the statute of limitations has not expired, because if there is an effort to cover up the crime in the first place, and I believe that there is, we can get into that, that means the statute of limitations resets itself every single day. John Brennan is accused and will be accused, I believe, in a court of law of trying to deny the American people the president that they duly elected in 2016. And that's a conspiracy. It's a coup attempt is what it comes down to.
Well, do you think they resumed their activity in 2020 and were in fact successful?
I don't think they were successful in 2020. I think that there were a lot of people who had not voted in the previous election or in several previous elections who were angered by Donald Trump, who were opposed to Donald Trump and came out. But that was a one-off. That was a one-shot deal because those people didn't come out to vote in 2024.
So you think 80 million people voted for Joe Biden?
I do.
74 million for Trump in 2024? Mm-hmm. I got to really, we can spend a whole show on that. We only have about 35 minutes. I worked with a legal team in Georgia for 3 years. I've seen the evidence. I've examined witnesses and I've cross-examined forensic accounts. Have you been following what's happened in Georgia over the last month?
Yeah, and Tulsi Gabbard's down there. Was down there.
Yeah, they just seized all the ballots. Now that concerns me that you don't acknowledge that there was a stolen election in 2020.
Well, lay it out. I mean, I'm all for seeing the evidence, but even Republican states run by Republican governors with Republican legislatures say that it's just not there.
Well, that is a left-wing media talking point. So let's break it down for just a minute.
Believe me, I'm not a.
No, I'm not accusing you of being a left-winger, but what I do want to know is whether you still have a relationship with the CIA, and if so, what it is. I mean, I like you, John, very much. I've watched every episode, I think, with Julian Dory. I saw you on another podcast just recently. Who was the host? You come across as very trustworthy and a really good guy. I'm sorry, I've just gotten cynical, and I've gotten to the point where I really question everything that we are told.
And that's healthy.
I never questioned our government my entire life until my eyes became open. And now I question everything. If they say it's green, I'm wondering if it's not really red. If it's red, if it's not really white. I mean,
but let me interrupt you though. Right after the 2020 election, I was asked by a friend of mine who works for Mike Lindell to participate in conference call, and she said, "You're gonna want to be sitting down during this conference call because this thing's gonna blow the lid off the theft of the 2020 election." I said, "Great." I logged on. I'm listening to it, and they're going on and on and on about how the Italians somehow programmed satellites to intercept votes. And afterwards I said, "Are you insane? Do you have any idea how impossible what you're describing possibly could be?" And she said, "No, this is going to blow the lid off of it." And nothing ever came of it because it was nuts and it was impossible.
Let me tell you the evidence that I have personally witnessed. The election in Georgia was decided by 11,778 votes. We've got 3,200 duplicate ballots on Brad Raffensperger's own Secretary of State website. Okay, if you looked at them, you would say, obviously that's a duplicate. I mean, there's a little curly Q under one of the ovals. There's some lipstick smeared on one of the ballots. I mean, we could go on of the unique identifying marks that you can discern. So 3,200 taken away from Biden, given to Trump, all of a sudden you've cut the margin in half. There are 14,000 people registered to vote by first name with perfectly sequential voter ID numbers. Impossible. Under any scenario, impossible. There were votes from UPS stores, homeless shelters, abandoned apartment buildings into the thousands. There was ballot harvesting of epic proportion, 2,000 mules. There were 4 witnesses who independently provided sworn affidavits that they saw a 20,000, roughly approximate, a pallet full of absentee ballots, which was their exact description. A pallet full of absentee ballots, all scored identically, all printed by a printer, not scored by a human hand, all made out for Biden in the State Farm Arena waiting to be tabulated. Susie Voyles, Scott Hall, Bridget Thorne, and Robin Satir are the people who witnessed that and put their name on an affidavit under oath. We took the deposition of one of the Fulton Board of Elections supervisors, and he said, yeah, we ordered 20,000 pieces of absentee ballot paper 10 days before the election. And he was asked, what did you do with it? Why did you order it? Because you can't get it, print it, mail it, get it back. And he said, well, I don't really know. And so that kind of equates with a pallet full of pristine ballots. So we think there are 20,000 fraudulent ballots that hopefully will be in the trove of documents that the FBI confiscated from the storage facility in the Board of Elections. I'll give you one further and then we'll move on. But this is, to me, is the most compelling evidence that there is. All the Fulton County judges recused themselves in the case of Satir, Jeffers, and Perdue, as in David Perdue. And so the case went to Judge Brian Amaro in Henry County, which is just south of Atlanta. He ruled that the petitioners demonstrated a prima facie case, and he ordered the absentee ballots be unsealed and available for us to inspect. He never gave us the date, time, and manner of inspection, yet 9 months later, Judgey had a change of heart and threw us out on standing, which, by the way, the Georgia Supreme Court unanimously reversed. Judge McBurney got the case back because when it was given back to Amaro, he said, oh, no, Judge, you don't want the case. Here, you have it back. And so it went to McBurney, who wrote the most vile, biased opinion I've ever read in my 45 years as a member of the bar. And so he had it. He sat on it for 2 years. The U.S. Department of Justice wrote him a letter and the Board of Elections some months ago saying, turn over the damn evidence. And he ignored it. And so and I said on the show, the U.S. Marshal is going to show up. And I was wrong. It was not the U.S. Marshal, it was the FBI. I'm just saying, then one last important thing that relates to a point that you made. You said all these Republican governors. True. Brian Kemp, Republican, used to be Democrat, now he's Republican. He received a letter from Joe Rossi, a retired numbers guy from PepsiCo, who devoted 3 years of his life tabulating the 2020 election in Georgia. He concluded that 40,000 votes in Fulton County were fraudulent and illegal. He also concluded there were 400,000 ballots in the state that fell into the same category. I have friends in Atlanta who went to lunch with the governor at the Blue Ridge Grill right there a mile from my house. And he said, we looked at the election and we couldn't see anything. But the same period of time, he sent that letter that I referenced to the Board of Elections and Brad Raffensperger saying this needs to be looked at. Last point, and I'll be quiet. I'm sorry, you just ripped off a scab. I lost my thought, but I'll get it back. Hang on a second.
Raffensperger.
Thank you. The head of Georgia's GBI, the Bureau
of Investigation,
local version
FBI.
of the FBI, the state agency, went to the governor and said, we've looked at this ballot harvesting and there's really stuff here that needs to be looked at. Kemp told him, don't touch it. David Perdue testified to this before the grand jury in Georgia, Fonnie Willis's grand jury. And he said that the head of the GBI told him that he was not going to look at ballot harvesting because he had the reputation of being a team player.
Which team?
Well, Governor Kemp's team. But who's Governor Kemp playing for? I don't know. But none of it adds up. So to me, you've got a stolen election, a cover-up, and followed by a cover-up, and flagrant, epic evidence, ample evidence to convict any and all of the people who participated in this.
Well, there it is. I mean, the FBI is on the ground. Tulsi Gabbard is, I'm not sure exactly what she's doing, but as the director of national intelligence, it would be highly irregular for a director of national intelligence to waste his or her time on something that's not of great import. So maybe we'll get to the truth, to the bottom of it.
And I think you already touched on it. I think Tulsi Gabbard is there because I do believe those rumors about votes being changed in the middle of the night from servers in Venezuela and in Serbia are real. I've spoken with an individual who has spoken with the programmer in Serbia who offered to come here and testify if he was given protective custody. And I don't know that anything ever happened. That is secondhand hearsay, not admissible in a court of law, but it is smoke. It is perhaps probable cause to investigate it. But the other information I shared with you, that's not conjecture. That's not hearsay. That is direct evidence of fraud. So my knowledge is limited to Georgia. I spent 3 years working on it. I've looked at the fact that the media lies. I know they lie. And I'll tell you why in a second. The judges, I think, have been gotten to. I don't know by who or how. I've not actively practiced law for many years, but at my initial career, I worked at the district attorney's office and then a big law firm in corporate law. But I've watched what happens in the law for 45 years. Never have I seen judges behave the way these judges have behaved. And then third, our constitutional officers utterly failed us. So having looked at the evidence and know what I know, I said, there's nothing left to do. So I ran for Attorney General of Georgia with the promise that we would investigate election fraud in Georgia. And I did great. I just didn't win. Not going to get the chance to conduct the investigation, but I'm glad that the FBI is there. And look, we're not relitigating 2020. Sure. And I don't mean to be a one-trick pony, but I'm telling you, it's just so disturbing to me. It is fundamentally disturbing to me that people could be greedy enough and lust for power or determined enough to get their own way that they would deprive me and my family and my friends and the people of Georgia their franchise, which our Constitution depends upon.
And that is exactly why this investigation in the Southern District of Florida is so important. Because I believe, and I think you probably agree with me, that John Brennan appears to be the crux of this whole situation. It's not just it's not just John Brennan didn't like John Kiriakou and so he prosecuted him. It's Brennan has his fingers in so much of what is wrong in our country right now that we really need to get to the bottom of it. And I'm glad that a grand jury was impaneled in a place where an independent investigation can be conducted, unlike, the Eastern District of Virginia,
right,
or the District of Columbia, where you're not going to get justice.
Yeah.
We need that kind of not judicial, but legal independence to get to the bottom of this story.
Well, so John, thank you for discussing it with me so professionally and unemotionally. I'm the one who gets emotional because
we should all be seeking the truth, no matter where the truth leads us.
100%. Do you think it's just John Brennan though? What about Clapper and Comey?
No.
Obama and Clinton?
You're 100% right. You're 100% right. They're all involved up to their necks in all of these different things. I was just talking about Hillary Clinton earlier today on a podcast. Somebody asked me about the split between between the Russian Orthodox Church and the Ukrainian Orthodox Church, and that goes back to Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton, I happen to be Greek Orthodox. Hillary Clinton purposely split the Ukrainian Orthodox Church off of the Russian Orthodox Church, where it had been for 1,000 years, just to put pressure on the Russians. And the region hasn't been the same ever since. You look at Clapper lying to Congress that the CIA, NSA et al. Don't spy on Americans. You're talking about Clapper being forced finally to admit, in response to a question from Senator Rand Paul, that Barack Obama as president had the legal authority, according to a Justice Department memo, to murder American citizens on U.S. soil who had never been charged with a crime. So yeah, it's a whole gang of people that's completely out of control, acting extra constitutionally, and they have to stop.
I have said I think this federal government is rotten to its core.
It is.
And the more we learn about Epstein, the more we're able to see the rot. And it's beyond bad. It is demonic. It is vile. It shocks the conscience. And these people have power that they're yielding on a daily basis. And I understand John Brennan, I may have gotten this from you, held Tuesday meetings on updating who was to be assassinated and what the status was. This is shocking.
In fact, there's a postscript to that. So I've spoken for a long time about what was called the Tuesday morning kill list meetings.
Yeah, that's it.
So John Brennan chaired this meeting at the White House every Tuesday morning at 7 o'clock to come up with a list of people for the CIA to kill that week. These are people who had never been charged with a crime. And the meeting was made up mostly of attorneys. Well, with that aside, as a secondary issue, one of the things that we've learned that nobody's yet talking about from this latest tranche of Epstein documents is that Barack Obama's White House counsel, a woman named Catherine Rumler, was very close to Jeffrey Epstein. And she tried repeatedly, we don't know if she was successful, she tried repeatedly to connect Epstein with John Brennan. There was one email that she sent to Epstein saying, "Hey, John Brennan, CIA director, gave me the CIA's highest honor today. Pretty great, huh?" And then later on, she says, she says to Epstein, "You're going to be in Washington next week. I want you to meet John Brennan. Let's get together for lunch, the three of us." Why? Why would John Brennan need to be in touch with Jeffrey Epstein? And then we learned in this latest tranche of Epstein Files that Epstein's attorney repeatedly reached out to the CIA and to the National Security Council to ask for a letter confirming that Epstein was working on behalf of the CIA.
Well, what do you think? What year was the conversation with Obama's White House counsel? I guess that would have had to have been like 08, 09?
Oh, no. This was 2015. It was late. 2015, 2016.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
It was late.
One way to look at that is if Epstein was CIA, he would not have needed an introduction.
Yeah,
to
no,
Congress.
yeah, he wasn't CIA. I have no doubt that he offered himself up. I have no doubt that he probably did things on behalf of the CIA. He was most definitely an Israeli asset. There's no question about it.
I believe that.
He's been outed. He's an Israeli asset. But it looks like he was also doing some work on behalf of MI6 in the UK and MI5 and maybe the Germans.
I don't know the difference between MI6 and MI5.
Oh, MI5 is the British version of the FBI, and MI6 is the British version of the CIA.
I thought that's where you were going to go with that.
So yeah, he was an intelligence peddler. He was trying to ingratiate himself with everybody just so he could call in favors later.
And blackmail people. And that was where he got his power from, right?
Certainly.
So since we do have limited time, can I just fire some questions at you and let's get short answers? Who killed the 35th president of the United States in your opinion or belief?
See, you put me on the spot with the very first.
Hey, this is the starting point for me.
Immensely unpopular. But I believe that we need to give very, very serious investigation into the Israeli involvement in the Kennedy assassination. I don't believe. In fact, I know for a fact that not all of the Kennedy documents were released in this latest final tranche.
If you're going to get convicted of murder, you'd much rather be convicted of destruction of evidence, I think, than the main job.
Exactly.
So I never had the false expectation that we were going to really get a smoking gun. But I was home from the fourth grade when Kennedy was assassinated. I had the flu. I'd been in bed for 3 days, and I woke up at noon. It's like I can play this back in my mind, and I thought to myself, if you don't get your butt out of bed, you're never going to get well. And I knew my mom watched As the World Turns every day at 1 o'clock. So I scrambled out of bed and I changed my clothes and walked down to the family TV black and white television set in the basement. And as I was walking down the stairs, my mother heard me and she said, "Oh, John, come sit next to me." And she was really a sweet, sweet person. And I loved her to death and she loved me. And so I didn't think that was very surprising that she would say that, but it sounded foreboding, the tone of her voice. And I sat down next to her. I said, "Mom, is everything okay?" She said, "No, John, the president has been shot." Now, as a 10-year-old, I remember trying to process what she was telling me because I'd never heard of someone getting shot other than in the movies. Violent crime was not a part of my reality. And so we sat in front of that TV for the next 4 days. And my heart broke for the First Lady, literally broke, and for her children. And I saw John in the rotunda lift the flag of the casket looking for his father. That image haunts me to this day. I saw him saluting the horse-drawn carriage with his father's casket. The sadness that I experienced when I relive this is overwhelming. And then my dad and I were sitting there watching television on Sunday morning, and I saw Jack Ruby on live television shoot and kill Lee Harvey Oswald. So these images have haunted me. My intellectual curiosity has driven me to read everything I can get my hands on, look at every video, talk to everybody. I went to Dallas just in November of this year and talked to witnesses and people who had a close connection. I've read Roger Stone's book, The Men Who Killed Kennedy, The Case Against LBJ. I've read The Unspeakable by Douglas. I've read The Devil's Chessboard by David Talbot. They all come to the same conclusion. I've also read Mark Lane and a number of other books, as well as that guy, who is it, that is, was at Fox and wrote a book about
Kennedy. Killing Kennedy. was the name of the book.
Yeah.
How quickly we
I know
forget.
it, John. You got the same affliction I do. But
he did Killing Lincoln, Killing Jesus, Killing Kennedy.
Right. But I've tried to keep an open mind to all the possible theories. And the only one that really resonates and makes sense to me is that Johnson was being dropped from the ticket. He was being investigated for the abusing the cotton allotment subsidies in Texas with Billy Saul's Estes. And he was under investigation, and Mac Wallace was convicted of murder of the agricultural commissioner in Texas, who was Johnson's protege and alleged hitman. There was no paraffin on Lee Harvey Oswald. There were no fingerprints in the sniper's nest, but there was a fingerprint of Mac Wallace, who was convicted by a jury of 12 men and women in the assassination or the murder of the agricultural commissioner. The judge reduced the sentence to time served and put him on probation. He never spent a day in jail. So I think, with reason, that Johnson ordered it, Dulles carried it out, and Hoover covered it up.
Americans have very little understanding of just how evil the Dulles brothers were. We're still paying for their crimes 3/4 of a century later. It's just awful. If your viewers haven't had a chance to read The Devil's Chessboard, I would highly recommend it. It's an exceptionally well-researched book.
Mr. Talbot was the first guest we had on this program.
Oh, no kidding.
2.5 years ago. And he and I actually sparred a little bit, but we did it respectfully and we left on very good terms. I really liked him and trust him. But so if our own government killed Kennedy, which is what I believe, and what else is true? Who killed his brother, Bobby? Who killed MLK? There was a civil case in Tennessee, and the jury of 12 men and women found that the guy that was convicted of killing Martin Luther King was not the assassin, but it was most likely a conspiracy that involved our government.
And in fact, Martin Luther King's own children never believed that James Earl Ray killed Martin Luther King.
No, we had his cousin on The Truth a couple of months ago. She said none of them believed that James Earl Ray killed.
None of them. The conventional wisdom is that it was the FBI. I went to the Lorraine Motel. I'm sure you have too.
My son went to Rhodes in Memphis, so I went there. So I used to jog, and I jogged from our hotel, the Peabody, up to the Lorraine.
Well, I went to the spot where the guest house was, where James Earl Ray was allegedly staying, and from where he allegedly took the shot. But listen, this is the situation. The setting was so ridiculous. I just can't wrap my head around it. We're supposed to believe that he was in this tenement rooming house in the communal bathroom, which had a view barely of the Lorraine Motel, and that he stood in that bathroom for 6 hours waiting for Martin Luther King to appear. Nobody else in the whole building had to use the bathroom for 6 hours. He just stood in there with a rifle, no less. He was drunk, which he even later admitted to. He was drunk the whole time, and he got off that one single shot across 2 city blocks to kill Martin Luther King. I just don't believe it.
Who done it?
I think the FBI did it. I mean, we already know with 100% certainty, because the FBI has finally admitted to it, that they actively tried to get Martin Luther King to commit suicide. They sent him poison pen letters saying that they were going to out him as a philanderer and a cheater and a communist.
He was.
Sure he was.
Based on hearsay, someone that was very close to him.
Oh, yeah, everybody knew he was a cheater. I mean, they have recordings of him in flagrante delicto with different women.
He said that MLK didn't think God didn't punish you for that. That it was wrong, but God wouldn't get you for it.
Yeah.
So if that's true, then what happened to Building 7?
Oh no, I'm I am not in any way, shape, or form a 9/11 truther. Building 7, the ground that Building 7 was on was made unstable by the catastrophe that was that day. You know, if you push down on a tin can, nothing happens. If you put a little chink in it and push it down, it collapses. And I believe that's what happened to Building 7.
Does it bother you that Congressman, what's his name, from Pennsylvania, who was a firefighter and the head of the House Intelligence Committee?
I would say what I say to everybody else, and that is lay out the evidence. And I don't mean conjecture, I mean evidence.
What about every
Lay it out.
architect and engineer who's looked at it concludes that it was?
It's not every architect and engineer. It's every architect and engineer who has signed on to the 9/11 truth movement.
Okay, well, look, I don't know. The reality is, truthfully, God is my witness, I don't want to believe that it was anything other than a result of 9/11, the Twin Towers. I don't want to believe that. But the evidence that I've looked at and the people that I've listened to have pretty much convinced me that there is something there. And they all conclude, most of them, that all the people I've listened to, I have not listened to the people that say that it was because of a bad foundation.
And what about the emergency fuel depot that was 7, 8 stories underground exploding? That didn't have anything to do with it?
I'm not aware of that, but
the NYPD had its emergency fuel depot under the building.
Well, that's new information that I had not received. So that's pretty compelling, isn't it?
I think so.
Yeah, I agree with you. I did not know that. All right, so Butler, Pennsylvania.
Yeah, this is a weird one, isn't it? You know, I grew up 15 miles from Butler, Pennsylvania. All the years of my youth, I never missed.
Sure enough, where in Pennsylvania?
Newcastle, Pennsylvania.
We're neighbors
in Lawrence County.
Yeah, I grew up in Mount Gilead, Ohio.
Oh, no kidding. See, my mom was from Warren, Ohio, in Trumbull County.
Oh, sure. I knew there was a reason I like you. You got Buckeye running through your brain.
Seriously. And God forgive me, both of my ex-wives are from Ohio, but I won't get into that.
All right.
I always used to joke that, when you cross into a state, it says, welcome to Pennsylvania, welcome to Virginia. When you cross into Ohio, it says, abandon all hope, ye who enter here.
I love Ohio. All my relatives on my dad's side were from there. They were really good people, all farmers.
So far, all 4 of my 5 children who have been to college, I still have a 14-year-old, but all 4 of the older ones have gone to school in Ohio.
Where? I went to Ohio Wesleyan, the Harvard of the Midwest, by the way.
My first son went to Ohio State. My second one went to Cleveland State. My third is at Miami of Ohio, and my fourth is at the University of Cincinnati.
I bet you're proud of them. That is really a good record that speaks very well of you, John.
Hey, thank you. I appreciate that.
So, where did we leave off? Butler.
Well, let me say real quickly about Butler. I mean, this just screams cover up, doesn't it?
It screams deep state to me. I mean, they tried to get the guy every way they could. And when all failed, they try and take him out.
And then they just tell you repeatedly, there's nothing to see here. Let's just move on. Move on. He's dead. Everything's over. The president's fine. Let's just move on. But there hasn't been any real investigation.
No. Maxwell Urich's van was impounded right after the shots were fired. He was named as a person of interest. He had gauges in his ear, which he had removed, and he had scars on his ear. He fought in the Ukraine. He was in Portland. He was in Atlanta. He was in D.C. And he was arrested at a Trump rally in 2016. His parents owned Urich Munitions in Mesa, Arizona, and were known to have traded arms with third world countries and believed to have had CIA ties. Urich also supposedly knew the guy who tried to take a crack at the president in West Palm Beach. And they were both in the Ukraine at the same time and were believed to have known each other. Zoom in on the corpse on the AGR building, and you can see, I think, pretty distinctively that the shooter had scars on his ear. And Crooks had no scars. He had no pierced ears. I think it was Urich that fired the shots. And I don't know, they what do you call it? Cremated the body, 10 days after the attempted assassination. It just stinks to me. And there were breadcrumbs from Gallery Place in Washington to Crooks's house. And every time Crooks went to the firing range, somebody went with him and their names were redacted. So that concludes nothing except there's a lot of smoke that needs to be looked at. There's a lot of suspicious, sketchy stuff. What about Charlie Kirk? What do you think?
I don't think it was the Egyptian military or the Egyptian Air Force, as Candace Owen has been screaming from the rooftops. I don't know. I'm torn on this one.
Yeah, me too. I knew Charlie. Charlie was the smartest human being I have ever known.
You know, I have to say, I was surprised at how hard I took his death.
Me too.
I never met the man. Enjoyed his videos and his speeches. But that put me in a funk for weeks.
You just felt sucker punched.
Yeah, that's exactly how it felt.
That someone would deprive us of one of the brightest minds in the country who was a patriot. He was devout, and he could quote the Bible and the scripture like no preacher I've ever known. And just a phenomenal. I'd known him for 8 years. We weren't close friends. Wouldn't even say we were friends. We were more than an acquaintance, less than a friend. But I'd see him 2 or 3 times a year, and we would have cordial exchanges. I spent an hour and a half with him a year ago, and maybe 18 months now. And I just really enjoyed his mind and his service. And I don't buy it, the narrative at all. And now, I'm sitting here, I've talked to you for now 30, 40 minutes. I sound like a conspiratorialist. I'm aware of the concept, and I fight it with all I've got because I don't want to be crazy.
Yeah.
I want to be a rational, informed human being. But when I look at the evidence of all these things, it just all seems to lead back to intelligence to me, because I don't see how anyone else could pull them off and avoid an investigation. That's sort of the conclusion I draw through it.
And that's why we should demand of our elected officials, ride our elected officials to provide true oversight. You know, I complain all the time. The Senate and House Intelligence Committees are nothing more than cheerleaders.
Pure theater.
It's pure theater, right?
I get so sick of it.
And at the same time, you can't oversee an intelligence community of roughly 100,000 people with, 40 employees on the Senate side and 60 employees on the House. You can't do it. And they know you can't do it.
How many of those people, that 100,000, if that is the number, are embedded in the media in America and in other federal agencies?
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, and I'm cognizant that we have a minute, but I'll tell you really quickly. Operation Mockingbird, where the CIA was recruiting American journalists, it doesn't happen anymore. Congress outlawed it, but it doesn't need to happen because they control the American media. And we know that thanks to a Freedom of Information Act request filed by Jason Leopold of Bloomberg, where the CIA was threatening journalists with silly sanctions. We will never invite you to the Christmas party again. We will never give you an off-the-record quote, or a quote on background if you publish such and such an article. They don't need to recruit American journalists anymore because they control journalism.
I got 2 more questions for you real quick. Number one, why are you still alive? Or how are you still alive? I mean, you are really on thin ice with hot skates, aren't you?
I took their best shot and I came out stronger on the other end. And frankly, I'm so vocal, too many people would miss me.
Sunshine, the best disinfectant.
It is.
Yeah. Am I in danger?
No,
I don't worry about it. My megaphone is so small. But then I think about it, taking me out would be a good way to send a signal to everybody else. I mean, you're going to talk about us. This is what can happen to you. So the thought crosses my mind. I asked a friend of mine who was very high in government if he thought that I needed to temper my remarks or be worried. He said, nah, not really, but I'd be aware of my surroundings. And if you ever
Yeah.
see a drone, run for cover.
Yeah, I would agree with both of those. Yes.
I don't know. Last question. Will you come back? I really thoroughly enjoyed it.
Oh, of course. Of course. It's good to talk to you. Good to meet you.
All right. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Look forward to the next time. And that is the truth. Did you watch the Grammys? How about the Super Bowl? Are you into wokeism? Well, I'm not. In fact, for me, it kind of took the sugar off the candy. We have a special guest today who is a country and patriotic rock artist coming to you live from Nashville. Andy Ross, welcome to The Truth.
Hey, I'm happy to be here. Always a blessed day when you get to tell the truth. Let's go.
I love it. What did you think of the Grammys? Were you inspired?
Well, as a music artist, you kind of want to turn in. They make it really hard to turn in. And I did bounce. I did turn the channel a couple of times, and then curiosity would get a hold of me and I'd go back. I think I went back and forth 3 times, but the political stance and announcements and what they use that platform for is just it's a little hard to watch. So
who do you think is turning the screws? Who pushes that on us? I mean, I shared with you before we started recording that I worked at the Grammys for 10 years, for 10 days every year. I was the oldest PA in America, I'm pretty sure, but I loved it. It was such a wonderful experience. I love music. I got to have a front row seat right there and meet all the artists, and it was just one of the thrills of my lifetime. But I would sit there and I would have a hole in my tongue by the time it was over because I couldn't speak my mind because of all the leftist, democratic, liberal agendas that were pushed on 20 million Americans every year who tuned into the Grammys. I mean, but who's pushing it? Where is it coming from?
you're right. It's the people who are tuning in, but I think it's also, I don't know if it's a panel or a board or who's making the decisions and calling the shots for the Grammys and behind the scenes. I'd say the same thing for the Oscars, the same thing for the CMT Awards. But, if you don't fall in line to the agenda that they want to put on, you don't get nominated. I mean, you don't get invited. Morgan Wallen didn't go to the CMA, is not invited to the CMA Awards. Lee Brice, 8 number ones, has never been up for Song of the Year. If you're not marching to the beat of the drum of the people who organize these events, and if you're not putting out the same message they're putting out, I don't think you get a balcony seat to those events.
I mean, I want to start a conversation in this country, Andy. I've gotten kind of old. I hate to admit it, but I'm 72 years old. That's kind of old. But I've lived a good life and a full life, and I'm still kind of a romantic, and I'm still kind of a idealist. And I want to start a conversation in this country that begins with the question, on what can we agree? I mean, you're a wonderful country music star. I'm told I'm pretty good at interviewing people. We admire football players and basketball players and musicians and politicians, even if we don't necessarily agree with their political views. But why do we spend so much time arguing about things rather than discussing things on which we agree?
I think from being out there, I think more of us, even though we have some differences of opinion, some are a little right, some are a little left, I think there are quite a few things that a lot of us do agree upon, but you're never going to hear about it because the left-wing media is putting out such an agenda. I mean, just watch CNN for an hour, the Clinton News Network, and they feed on the very left. They feed on putting out the rightist, extreme right thing that happened that day and feeding it to their audience. And the right wing media is kind of done the same too. So no, there's not a lot of media out there about how, a guy that leans a little to the right and a guy that leans a little to the left, found 80% common ground. I'll never forget Ronald Reagan used to say, when you went in to make a deal, man, if you can get about 70% of what you want, you win. That's a victory. And I apologize if this sounds like self-promotion. I don't want to get into self-promotion, but at American Rebel,
Have at it. I want to hear about you.
well, at American Rebel, we introduced America's patriotic, God-fearing, Constitution-loving, national anthem singing, stand your ground beer. And we say that right on the can, Rebel Light. America's patriotic, God-fearing, Constitution-loving, national anthem singing, stand your ground beer. And we've had this company for 11 years. We introduced the beer a year and a half ago, and you would not believe the messaging I get, the comments I get about this MAGA beer that I put out, about this right-wing only beer. And I've said, well, what makes you think that? Why are you kind of coming at me about that? Well, look at the can. I said, yeah, America's patriotic, God-fearing, Constitution-loving, national anthem singing.
Why can we not agree on that?
Are you telling me? Yeah. Are you saying that if someone is liberal, that they can't be God-fearing, Constitution-loving? They don't sing the national anthem, and what did I put on the can that offended anyone? But it's so amazing that they get offended by those words.
So let's carry that one step further. Let's look at that in reverse, in all fairness and balance. What about the Budweiser can is there not to like? The only thing was when they started putting a trans person on one of their ads, right? So, I mean, you could make the argument in reverse.
You could make that argument. And maybe I'm just, one of these guys on the right. I could make the argument for that, but I just don't understand how someone on the left, a liberal person, says, we're patriots. You guys claim to be the patriots, but we're really the patriots. But I'm offended by God-loving, by God-fearing, Constitution-loving, national anthem singing. Those words upset me. How can you claim to be a patriot if those words upset you?
I will answer my own question. Okay. There's really nothing too much in common between the Budweiser issue and the American Patriot beer issue. I mean, every living American who wants to live in this country should be willing and able to celebrate America for all of its strengths, including patriotism, standing your ground, and God-fearing. I mean,
Constitution and singing the national anthem.
Where is your argument? Where is your disagreement with that, Mr. Liberal? I really don't get it. And that's kind of what I'm getting at. I mean, Ilhan Omar, I mean, do you really hate America? If you really hate America, why did you fake the immigration certificate and marry your brother so he could come here illegally and under false pretenses if you hate America as bad as you seem to?
Oh, the list of people that come to this country and then self-proclaim to hate the country and wish it was more like the country they came from, that they risked, limb and everything, risked all kinds of things to get here. That list is so long you can't see the end of it. I mean, that's wow.
Well, how about all the people who gave their lives for our freedoms? Yeah. Do they not have some? Could we not agree that they should be celebrated?
Celebrated, honored, respected, and I think that also trickles down to law enforcement and firefighters and first responders, and that are doing everything they can to make this the safest place and protect the best country that's ever been. There's just an overwhelming lack of respect for our troops and our firefighters and our police officers that I'll never understand.
I wasn't planning on going down that rabbit hole, but since you breached it, I've got this. I've worked in the district attorney's office in Bibb County, Macon, Georgia, at the early part of my career. I was a lawyer for 5 years. I worked in the inner city in Atlanta, in the worst zip code in America, trying to rehabilitate a 60 square block area. After the public's attention was drawn to the area, when the Atlanta police went in and shot up a 92-year-old grandmother, Katherine Johnston, who they had concocted a false story about. The story was true. It just, she wasn't the villain, but they were lazy. They performed shoddy police work.
Yeah.
They got the person wrong, the address wrong. They went into her house at 8 o'clock at night. She lived in fear of being broken into. She lived alone, so she reached for a rusted out pistol. As she was pulling it up, she fired one shot. It went into the ceiling. They pumped her full of 32 rounds of ammunition and then planted marijuana in her basement and said, oh, her grandson was dealing drugs out of the house. That story collapsed pretty quickly because it turned out that he was an all-A student and an Eagle Scout. There was also a confidential informant that was put in the back of a police car that night and was told what to say, and he thought he was being set up to take the fall for her murder. And so he somehow got out of the cop car and went to a payphone. It was in 2006. For those of you who are younger, a payphone used to be on the side of the road. You put a quarter in it, you make a phone call. So he called 911 and said, hey, my life is in danger. I want to be put under protective custody. And he told the story. The whole thing broke apart, and the 6 cops are mostly still in prison today. Anyway, my point simply is there are bad cops. Just like there are bad doctors, there are bad lawyers. I'm sorry, there are bad musicians. Well, Bad Bunny comes to mind. Wonder how I thought of that one. But every profession has bad actors. And it's so simple to paint a big, put them all into the same mosaic and say, well, they're all bad. But the fact of the matter is, I've lived in Palm Beach County now for the last 7 or 8 years, and I can tell you that the Palm Beach Sheriff's Office may be one of the best sheriff's departments in America. Those officers, every single one of them I have encountered, are as nice and as courteous and as helpful and as polite as you could ask for, and they risk it every day for us.
Every day.
Every day.
Yeah, every day. And it's the environment that they're risking it in today, seems to be a more risky environment than 20 years in past. So it's what I think is amazing is that people right now even sign up for that job. I mean, God bless them for signing up for that job. They know that they're dealing with some reputation issues, like you just mentioned. They know that there's a large percentage of the public that doesn't like them and want them, even patrolling in their neighborhood to try to keep the neighborhood safe. They get treated so disrespectful when people are not protesting. It's rioting, what we see a lot of times on TV. And whether it's ICE agents or whether it's police officers, I mean, I just tip my hat to them for even signing up for that job right now.
Well, I 100% agree with you. And I gave, through my charity, the Friends of English Avenue, we gave 2 police officers free rent to move into the worst zip code in America and live there and to become a part of the fabric of the community. And it really did help change things. The police used to not even want to come into that neighborhood. And when they did come, they would treat the complainant as if they were the villain. And so the whole picture was upside down. And then these 2 cops moved into the neighborhood. And when there was a police call anywhere near their house, the whole frickin' precinct showed up to help one of their own. Yeah. And then they started going to church in the neighborhood. They went to community meetings, and the people learned that they were human beings, and they happened to be compassionate and very nice. Yeah. And so I really am proud of the fact that we did that. And I would just wish that cops all across America could take a lesson in manners. I mean, I got pulled over one day for speeding down 41 in Atlanta. And this motorcycle cop pulled me over. I remember it like it was yesterday. It was 30 years ago. And he said, "Mr. Gordon, what's your hurry?" He said, "I clocked you at 40 and then 50 and then 60. I was going to let you go until you got to 60, and it's in a 40-mile-an-hour zone. And I'm afraid somebody's going to get hurt." And he was so polite and nice about it and gave me my ticket.
Yeah.
I wasn't mad at him.
Yeah.
But then you run into a cop who's got a little man complex and a badge and a gun, and they just treat you like dirt, and that's what gives you a bad feeling about cops sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, you can certainly understand everybody has a bad experience from time to time with people from any profession. There needs to be some type of the vetting process to become a law enforcement officer. If you're becoming a law enforcement officer because you want to pound your chest and bully people around and give you permission to be an SOB, that's not what we need.
And the people want to defund the police. That may be the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my life. Defund the police. Who are you going to call when something goes bump in the middle of the night?
Ghostbusters is out of business, so you got to call
That's
somebody.
Right. Who are you going to call?
Yeah.
But I think the answer is not defunding the police.
Yeah.
It's just holding the bad ones accountable in a way that it is appropriate for whatever their transgression is.
I haven't had that experience personally for a long, long time, but I have been a little bit witness to it back from my hometown, a small town that I grew up in southeast Kansas when I was very young. And I remember thinking to myself at a very young age, 18, 19 years old, maybe 20, 21, 22, but I remember thinking, why did they let the school bully that, picked on me and others through high school become a police officer? I mean, that's the wrong temperament for a police officer. Don't hire the school bully.
Yeah.
He's got that complex that you don't want in a police officer.
I'll give you one good reason why they do that. It's the best they can find for the amount of money that we are willing to pay.
Yeah.
We pay our firemen and policemen and first responders like crap. And so, we get what we pay for. And, if I were king for a day, I would probably reduce the police force by 20%, and I would take the savings and I would increase the salary of the other 80%, and we would attract the brightest and the best from all over the country to come and patrol and serve and protect the citizens of that jurisdiction. I think it would work. How about you?
I'm not quite up to school on the budgets of law enforcement, but I do know they're underpaid, and getting them through 20% reduction or any other method that would allow us to hire, as you said, the brightest and the right temperament of person to become a police officer. And public servant comes to mind. As a police officer, it's not just. It's not just writing speeding tickets. I mean, there is public service. I mean, I think everybody that becomes a law enforcement officer ought to have to watch a minimum before they take their exam of 6 episodes of Andy Griffith. I think that would help.
I totally agree. I yearn for those days. You're not old enough to remember Andy Griffith.
Oh, I'm telling you, I am. I'll be. I turned 60 in August.
Good Lord. You must not drink.
That's all this clean living.
You look young.
Thank you.
So where do you perform?
My first race coming, or my first performance of the summer is coming up first week of March in Gainesville, or the Gainesville Nationals NHRA race down in Florida. That's on a Saturday, and then Sunday the opening of the bike season down in Florida. I'm at this large venue, outdoor amphitheater called the Twisted Fork, down in Middle Florida. So I'll be going from there, and then it's pretty much nonstop for the summer. Looking forward to playing back close to my home area of Kansas City, playing the Black Oak Amphitheater down there coming up in May, and just dates all over the place. Headed to West Virginia next month. We'll be around, andyross.com. You can check out all of our tour dates and tour schedules, but we'll be out there rocking and preaching. That's for sure.
So what's it like as a celebrity and a rock star, or a country and patriotic rock star?
But just a little background. I had a TV show for 10 years called Maximum Archery World Tour, and I bow hunted all over the world on outdoor TV, Outdoor Channel, Sportsman's Channel, and I was bow hunting about 7 months a year.
You and my buddy Steve Bartkowski.
So we bow hunted again. I was in the woods about 7 months a year making this 10-year run TV show, and I thought what would be cool is if I wanted the show to have kind of a rock and roll edge. We filmed a lot of the travel and going in and out of bars and crossing borders, and it was kind of like a reality show meets a hunting show. And I thought, it'd be nice. I can play music if I had some proprietary songs. So I wrote "Gotta Go Hunting Blues," "Hunt Me Down," "Buck of a Lifetime," "Blood Trail on a Whitetail," "Support Your Local Wildlife." And I really did just want these shows these songs for the purpose of enhancing the show. However, I didn't see iTunes coming, file sharing, the internet blew up, and the next thing I knew, I had music going everywhere, which landed me into a music career. I'm currently recording my 4th record. And, I kind of came up, I was right in the beginning of YouTubes and social media and these things, and I was able to keep my publishing, keep my music, keep everything I write, keep all the business with me. And, it's a blessing to get up every day and to have it all under my control, play where I want to play. We primarily now are staying in the 18 states that sell and serve our beer at the venues and the races. And so I'm really blessed. I get to pick and choose. The fans are always great. I'm not out there playing the football stadiums, but it's nice to look out and see 1,800, 3,200 people singing to your song. So truly blessed.
So you're from Kansas. You live in Nashville. Do you cross paths with Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift?
Oddly enough, or coincidentally enough, Taylor's place is in my building. I live in Nashville. We live in the same building. She's not around much, like she used to be, but I've known her for 16 years. She's probably only here once or twice. Her parents will stay here once or twice, but she keeps the place. And if I had to guess, I don't know Taylor's business, so I'm not citing her business here, but if I had to guess, she still keeps the place for tax reasons. We're a state, no state tax in Tennessee. I know she's on the East Coast, West Coast a lot. I have met Travis. I wrote a song for Pat Mahomes called Showtime Strut when he first came into the league. So I do know him. And I'm going to be on Kylie Kelsey's podcast later in the month. So I know him, but do I see him much? No. I don't see Taylor. I see her once or twice a year.
Well, I met her at the Grammys during my stint there. I've met her 3 or 4 times. She could not be a lovelier, more humble person when you meet her in person. That we didn't have a long exchange, but I high-fived her when she came off the stage after presenting or performing. And she was just wonderful. And she gushed over the fact that she was so well received at the Grammys. She came off the stage and she had tears, not big tears, but little tears coming down her face saying, "They love me. They love me. They stood for me."
Politically, I have a lot of, I don't see eye to eye with Taylor on a lot of things. I've never had a political conversation with her, nor do I want to. But all that aside, she's one of the nicest, kindest, humblest people that you could ever, that I've ever been around as far as celebrities go. And I've been around a lot of them.
Yeah, I bet.
She's as kind to people in this building, and really tries to just be one of the people over at, we used to go to South Street and stuff, and she never wanted to be treated any different than just, one of the people in the room. But she's very kind.
Yeah. Now, what about Keith Urban? Do you cross paths with him? He's
I've met Keith, but I've not really had any conversations with him.
He was a frequent performer at the Grammys, so
yeah.
I saw him every year. He was one of the few that would actually stop and engage. I mean, we actually developed a rapport with one another over 4 or 5 years, and I really enjoyed my chances to interact with him. And I'm just such a huge music fan. It's just a real pleasure, and it was a great experience for me during those years. Well, how do you think?
Yeah.
How are we going to get people to get along? How can we bring people together?
I really think the people themselves are going to have to decide to do it. I don't think any of when we have political elections cycle after cycle, and they're so far apart and so quick to put down or point out or make their point of views look foolish, and it's just hard to. I mean, it's hard to vote for a president, and then if you end up in that, now you're in that camp, they're in that camp, and I think the people at some point are just going to have to decide that what they really need to do is find more time to hear the truth.
Yeah.
And make their own decisions and be, and by the way, get back to the good book, love thy neighbor.
Bingo. Bingo.
Love thy neighbor. No, and here's a big one. Don't make false witness,
Yes, I agree with you. Well, that's a good place to wrap it up there. And Andy, I really appreciate it. It's been a real privilege and an honor to be with you today. And I appreciate your coming on The Truth. I hope I will get to come and see one of your performances. I mean, I love backstage and free beer, but I'm not saying I don't know what I was thinking, but anyway.
Well, you come on back and we'll bring some cameras and we'll just have another great conversation. I'd love to have you anytime.
That would be really fun.
And
Thank you.
I'd love to be back on your show anytime.
Absolutely. You can count on becoming a regular. I really enjoyed talking to you today, and I really appreciate what you're doing as one person to help save this country. And I mean that sincerely. If there were 300 million Andy Rosses, this country would be a much better place today. And that is the truth.
That's very kind. Thank you. God bless you.
You bet. Have a good rest of your weekend and break a leg.